They say fate can be cruel, but in December of 1740, it played a strange and twisted joke on one young man's life. William Duell was just 17 years old, a boy from Middlesex with a troubled past and a reputation for petty theft. His crime, however, was no small matter. He was convicted of the assault and murder of a young maid, Sarah Griffin. The trial was swift, the evidence presented without hesitation, and the verdict was absolute: guilty. In an era when justice was as swift as it was merciless, the punishment for murder was death by public hanging. The sentence was to be carried out at Tyburn, one of London's most infamous execution sites, where thousands had met their end before jeering crowds. On the morning of his execution, a thick winter fog clung to the streets of London, muffling the sound of footsteps as people gathered to watch the boy's fate. Execution days were morbid spectacles. Vendors sold pies, children sat on their father's shoulders, and the smell of damp earth mixed with the metallic temps of anticipation. William was led from Newgate Prison in a cart, his wrists bound, a black hood draped loosely over his head. Witnesses later said he looked pale but strangely calm, as though he had already resigned himself to the inevitable. The gallows loomed ahead, a dark silhouette against the gray sky, the noose swaying gently in the wind. The hangman, a man who had sent hundreds to their deaths, went about his work with the precision of habit. The rope was checked, the knot tied with expert care, and the crowd quieted as the priest whispered William's final prayers. When the trapdoor gave way, the boy's body dropped. The rope snapped tight, and a collective gasp swept through the onlookers. He hung there motionless for the required minutes, his feet twitching slightly before falling still. The hangman finally signaled that the execution was over, and the crowd slowly began to disperse, satisfied that justice had been done. His body was cut down, as was customary, and placed into a rough wooden coffin for transport. In those days, executed criminals were often sent to medical schools for dissection, both as a punishment and as a contribution to the study of anatomy. William's coffin was delivered to the Royal College of Surgeons, where a group of medical students and professors prepared for the grim task. The room was cold, the air smelling faintly of alcohol and formaldehyde, the flicker of oil lamps casting long shadows on the walls. The lid was lifted and the young man's pale face was revealed, but something was wrong. At first, one of the students thought he saw the boy's lips tremble, just slightly. Then another noticed the faintest movement of his chest. A third leaned closer, placing a hand near Williams's mouth, and swore he felt a warm breath. The room erupted in chaos. The execution had failed. Doctors scrambled to check his pulse, finding it weak but undeniably present. Some rushed for blankets and hot water, while others simply stood frozen, staring at the boy who had been hanged before hundreds of witnesses. News spread through the streets like wildfire. By evening, London was buzzing with the story of the teenager who had returned from the dead. Some called it a miracle, a sign from God that the boy should be spared. Others insisted it was simply incompetence, that the rope had been tied poorly or the drop too short to break his neck. In truth, William had been sentenced to hang until dead, but there was no provision in the law for what to do if a prisoner somehow survived. The authorities faced a dilemma. Hanging him a second time might ignite public outrage and be seen as cruelty beyond measure, especially given his young age. Reluctantly, they decided to commute his sentence to life imprisonment. William Duell was taken back to Newgate, this time not to face the gallows, but to spend the rest of his days in a cold, damp cell. He became something of a legend among prisoners, the boy who cheated the hangman. But surviving death did not bring him peace. Some said he became quiet and withdrawn, speaking only when necessary. Others claimed he often woke in the night screaming, clutching his throat as though the rope were still there. Perhaps he felt gratitude for his second chance, or perhaps he carried the weight of knowing the world had already buried him once. Historians still debate the details. Was it pure luck, a freak accident of human physiology, or divine intervention? Did his youth and strong body save him? Or had the hangman simply misjudged the execution? Whatever the truth, William Duell's case remains one of the rare moments in history when death's grip loosened, just enough to let its victim slip away. Even now, more than 2 centuries later, his story is told as both a curiosity and a haunting reminder. Sometimes the line between life and death is thinner than a single strand of rope. Like, subscribe, and join us again. Because history remembers the flames long after the fire is gone.